calls just today from a number of citizens in London, businesses, organizations, as well as some media from across the country about how will these tariffs affect food banks like London's. I think the best I can tell you is that we don't fully know. That's true with most of these things around the tariffs, but that we have been in preparation. Jane and I were in Mississauga last week meeting with all of the food banks from across Ontario. Now, they had a plan that was a 10-year plan, a strategic plan that we were all working on together. We cooperate and collaborate with businesses and companies and farmers and others. That got thrown out the window when the tariff stuff came, and we've now developed a 2-year emergency plan. But what it means is that food that is coming in from across the country and also from in the province itself will be going and shipped out to various food banks across the province, especially those that are in need. I would remind you that large food banks like Ottawa, Toronto, and even in Kingston, other larger centers as well, are now in the process of rationing, and they have been for a while. The demand has been high. Donations have been down a bit because of the cost of food. In London, we have not had that difficulty. For the last 40 years, we've really worked hard at diversifying what we do. So we get lots of help from things like average citizens, food drives, schools, even unions, businesses, all sorts of different organizations have helped us a lot. Plus, we've had food drives, which have been a real help as well. And then we also work with local growers and producers and farmers and others. We've done that for a long time. So what that means is the sources of our food are coming in at different places to the food bank itself, and we give it out from there. I'd remind you that hundreds of tons of food a year comes into the food bank from grocery stores through the community refresh program that we send out then to other organizations and also give out at the food bank itself to the 6,000 families that we're helping each month. So we're not new to this. We've been through this before. I would remind you, in the 4 decades we've been around, we've had something like 5 recessions, a pandemic, and now this tariff threat. So, we've earned our stripes a bit at knowing how to cooperate and collaborate with other organizations across the province and across the country in order to make sure that the food keeps coming in for people. It's really important. We've been in touch with grocery stores here in London to talk about what might need to be done. There's a chance that there'll be surplus foods initially. Food that will not be able to now go into the States because of the tariffs might be sitting here in docks and in walk-in coolers, so on and so forth, that they might want to get rid of fairly quickly before it goes bad. That's especially true of perishable items. So food banks have to be prepared, like we are, to be able to take that food in its early days in order to be able to get it out. We have spoken with greenhouse vegetable growers and others across the province. They're expecting an immediate impact, and they don't know what it's going to mean for them, but they expect that they're going to take a big hit because anything that's in the perishable range is going to be difficult. That includes things like beef and chicken. It's going to be a real problem, I think. So we had a food bank. We have a board meeting tonight. And we're going to sit down with the board and we're all going to talk through how we're going to handle this. And the thing you have to remember about the London Food Bank is that we are not talking about just the people at the food bank. We help 40 other agencies. We are also a hub for Southwestern Ontario. So a number of other smaller food banks are helped through us. So the national supply of food that comes in through Food Banks Canada, or the food that comes in from Feed Ontario, which is the food banks in Ontario dealing with grocery stores, businesses, and others, that gets brought down to places like ours. And then from our operation, we help these other smaller ones that are out there. So we're really tied in. It's really integrated. And it's really important that the food bank succeeds during this time because so much is depending on it. That's part of what we have to go through tonight at the board meeting. And I think we've got some serious decisions to make. We decided months ago, we knew that things were going to be tough in this next couple of years. So we decided to hold some of our food and supplies in reserve in order to be able to help other agencies And we're really thankful that we did that because a number of those agencies have now been cut back through lack of government supports, or maybe they haven't had the success in fund or food raising that they had in the past. Many of these groups, including food banks in Ontario, have to either close, ration, lay off staff, or help not as often. These are serious problems, and they're affecting every community, especially people that are vulnerable. I think the hardest thing of all, and we've seen this through all the recessions that we have been through, will be the job losses. If Doug Ford, the premier, is right, we could be looking at between 300,000 and 500,000 lost jobs in the province. Now, we have been through this, as I said, as food banks, and when people are suddenly unemployed, they might be getting employment insurance, perhaps, and that's probably how the federal government is going to handle this particular problem for people that have lost work, at least temporarily, in this next while due to the tariffs. But a lot of those people don't have the money that it will take to keep up all the payments that they have. So they will be coming to the food bank. That has been our experience in other recessions, and especially the big recession that came along in 2007. So we have a big spring food drive coming up now. It will start in 2 or 3 weeks. It's one of the biggest of the year. It was the first big food drive we had all those 40 years ago. And Londoners have always been really generous in that drive. But what does it mean now? What's it like having a food drive in the context of all of these tariffs, layoffs, people not being able to afford food at the grocery stores themselves maybe running out of supplies. We've all been through this before in the pandemic. There's probably a world of hurt coming. But I do think in London, it's unique. Because of our diversity in London of where all the different food supplies come from, we don't depend on any one group or two groups. There's a number of different groups that help. And then the food drives, of course, themselves, where average Londoners get to weigh in and help out in those things. It's huge. Like it's almost 2 million kilograms of food that we got last year just through all of those different sources. So we'll depend on those sources as we go through this trial. It's not going to be easy, but we're experienced from the standpoint we've been through it before, not just as a food bank, but the other agencies, our large organizations like hospitals and businesses, government, and others. We're going to have to find a way to collaborate together as we go through this problem. But I think for me, as I think through it, when I was fielding these calls this morning from the media, the hardest thing above all is going to be what families are about ready to go through. This is what bad politics does. One person south of the border, along with a team of his supporters, I get all of that. They have decided that this is the way that they're going to handle their economy. And it affects billions of people, not just millions, but billions around the world as these things suddenly change. So this isn't just an economic up and down like a recession. This is a particular attempt to intervene in our economies in a way that's going to leave many Canadians bereft. I think we should really be pulling for those folks and those families. They're going to go through a world of hurt right now. Our job as a food bank is to be there for it. Jane and I were up most of the night trying to figure out what we're going to say to the board tonight. We're all going to be working on this together with the groups that help us and also the groups that we help to do our absolute level best. But let's be pulling for those families, for those kids that are already food insecure. It's about ready to get worse for them. And I would remind you, it's over 2 million kids across the country are food insecure. For the 7 million people across the country that are food insecure, it's about ready to get a lot worse. Yes, there's a lot of championing going on and a lot of things saying, oh, we're going to be there. We're going to stand together as a country. And I believe that we will. But we stand together the best when we prioritize our most vulnerable in a time of real change. And that's what we're going through. As difficult as these months are probably going to be, we're ready. We're ready at the food bank. The board has been ready for some time. Our job now is not just to feed the people who come to us directly. It's to make sure that this community has enough sustainable supplies that can help us get through that problem. And for that, we're going to need everybody, all hands on deck, to continue to come and help. We have 3,000 volunteers at the food bank. They'll all show up. I guarantee it. They always do. They always have. But when it comes to the donations and other things, yeah, we're going to need the help to keep going. But this community has been so massively generous over these last few years. London has stuck out because of its stability and sustainability when it comes to these emergency food supplies. So we're all on it together. We'll keep you posted. We'll keep watching the news just as you will. But here we go. Those days have now finally come. We as a food bank are ready, and the people need help. That's what we're there for. And the reason why we're still around, because we live in a mighty generous London, Ontario, and we're thankful for it.